Why is that doing that?
What's that?
I don't know.
Sounds like a zebra.
Sure. There's nothing to see. This isn't for y'all.
Come on. Gideon.
Hello, everyone. How are you today?
Gideon.
Hey, good to see everyone. I'm glad you could make it. My Dara Weaver, she's my best friend. We also co-direct the Paideia Fellowship together. She might be joining us at some point. She can pull away from what she's doing. Hey, Amber. Yes, it's great to see you as well. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Good. Well, I'm glad they're of service to people. Good. All right. So just going to open us up in a word of prayer, and then we will get started. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to meet here together with these ladies. Lord, I just offer this time to you and ask that you would have us to learn what you would want us to learn, and that our conversation would center around seeking you first in our homeschools and communities. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and whatever notes that I type out while we're meeting, I'll make sure to post for you guys somewhere where you can access them. So don't, if I type faster than you can write, don't fret about that. I will make sure that you have access to them.
Close that up.
Okay, and if you have background noise, try to mute your microphone. And then if you want to talk, you can always unmute when you need to speak. Okay, so today we are talking about how to start a classical co-op. And I think that this may, and let me just tell you a little bit of my story about how I started, and then we'll talk a little bit about stories and how they relate and how they can be a good metaphor for starting a classical co-op or any co-op. I'm actually I want to see your faces while I talk for a minute. Hey, Dara, there she is. This is my sister muse, Dara Weaver, and the co-leader of our group. Hey, Cheryl and Amber, I just saw you this weekend. Oh, I miss you guys already. We were at the CiRCE conference together. It was fun. Is that, oh, I'm seeing all these faces. I wish we were like in person. This would be way funner. We were like all together sitting around a table. Okay, so I'll tell a little bit of my story, and then if Dara, if you want to share anything, then you can share too. Okay, so my name is Jennifer Dow. I started homeschooling in 2009, and I figured out that I liked classical education, and the only thing I knew about classical education at that point was what Mary Pride said in her Guide to Homeschooling, and she recommended a book, Susan Wise Bauer, of course, and so that I used her methods for the first year of homeschooling. After that, I found Classical Conversations. I realized I did not want to be by myself, that I needed some people in my life, and so somebody told me about that group, and I was a part of their group for 4 years. In that time, I joined the CiRCE apprenticeship, and it really transformed my life quite a bit. I learned my vision of what classical education is broadened. I started to understand what the 7 liberal arts were, and how the understanding those was central to understanding what classical education is, its goals, its purposes, this pursuit of truth, and how that actually happens in the realness of today. It took these beautiful ideas that I had heard about and gave feet to them. So all these ideas about truth, goodness, beauty, they became real, something I could actually practice when I began learning about the 7 liberal arts, and the ideas in David Hicks, and then Classical Academic Press, and what they're putting out there about restful learning. And then I discovered Charlotte Mason and started reading some of her stuff, and so many connections were happening. And as that was happening, my husband actually lost his job, and this was it was our 3rd or 4th year homeschooling, and we could no longer afford the program we were a part of, and I was devastated because those were where all my friends were. I mean, it was my whole world, and I just didn't even know what to do. Oh, sorry. Hey, Sierra, this is Bubby. Can you please talk to him? I don't want him to think I'm ignoring him. And just tell him what's going on.
Alrighty.
Thanks.
Hello.
And then I met Dara, and we were kind of in somewhat similar situations, and that, and so we were like, we don't want to have no community, so let's just get together. And we started meeting at my house once a week, just her and I and 2 other families that were new to homeschooling but didn't really have a vision for the philosophy of education they wanted to pursue. And yes?
Because he doesn't think Coach Quinn can pick him up by home.
Oh, I'll pick him up. I already told his coach I would.
Oh yeah, Mom.
I just have to finish this first. I got his back. My son doesn't think I'm going to pick him up. What's up with that? And as we went through the year, we even grew mid-year, and we realized that we were meeting a need that was really there. We were starting to marry these ideas that we had learned about with classical education, and started letting them be influenced by some of Charlotte Mason's ideas. And the next year, we stayed about the same numbers, but our vision for what we wanted to do began to grow. And after the 2nd year, we went from 8 families, or 4 families, to 25 families for our 3rd year. And that was insane, and I don't recommend that to anybody ever. But what was amazing to me, and still remains amazing to me, is people are hungry for this, for a real community that is about unity, that is pursuing truth, goodness, and beauty, that is not, that is just real. And, but there's a lot of challenges with creating a community like that. First of all, you're dealing with people. We are people, and we're sinners. And so I'm hoping that today's webinar will help us wrestle through some of these things, the joys of it, how to plan for it, and some of the hard parts of it. I also, my daughters agreed to be interviewed, so they, as long as we have time, I'm going to interview them, and you guys get to hear that about what they liked about co-op and what they don't like, and what they would like to see change, so you can hear from real kids. And I didn't filter anything, whatever they're saying. Oh, Garrett agreed. Okay, so Dara's eldest, who is a high schooler, he agreed as well. So you'll get to hear from a first grader, a rising 2nd grader, a rising 6th grader, and a rising 10th grader about co-op. So that should be good. All right. So Dara, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Dara. So my story is kind of similar to Jen's. I actually did not pursue any kind of community co-op or anything like that when my kids were in elementary school, because I wasn't ready to be taxi mom yet and drive the kids everywhere. So we just kind of stayed at home and did our thing. My first introduction to classical education was encountering the Well-Trained Mind book when my oldest was 2. And I knew all along that I wanted to homeschool. And I was homeschooled my whole life, so I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I went to curriculum fairs with my mom from the time I was 16, so I was scoping it out for a long time. So I decided I wanted to go the classical route and used some of her curriculum, some of which I still really like, and did that for a while. And then when my oldest was going into 7th grade or 8th grade, I don't remember which, our family had to move halfway across the country, and we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I got there, and I didn't really know anybody. And so I sat down at my computer, and I put into Google classical education, Charlotte, North Carolina, and Jen's blog came up. Now, this was at the time when she wasn't really updating her blog much. So she was mostly just advertising that she was teaching Lost Tools of Writing classes to parents. But that really interested me because I was kind of afraid of teaching writing in high school. So I contacted her and was like, hey, I'm new to the area. I'm sure you're super busy, but do you want to get together and hang out? And so I thought, well, worst she can do is say no, she's too busy. So she got back to me and said, yeah. So we hung out and got into a few adventures together that summer, and then decided to start co-oping together because our finances were tight at that point, and I had never done a community of any kind. So we just started co-oping together at her house and did that for a couple of years. And then once we opened it up to the public, it really grew exponentially, like she said. So yeah, we've been doing that together ever since, and we love it. My kids love it. And yeah, they can't imagine doing it any other way now. So that's my story.
Thanks, Dara. Yeah, when she said she was worried I would be busy, no one had ever contacted me through my blog before. She was the first person. And so I was so excited. I was like jumping around the room, and I was like, I was afterwards, I sent the email. I'm like, oh, she's going to think I'm a weirdo. She's not even going to want to talk to me. I'm like way too excited about this. Anyway, so yeah, that's our story. And over the last few years, of course, we've learned a lot of lessons. It was by the end of our second year, we knew we wanted to follow a path of pursuing the 7 liberal arts, and so we started making intentional efforts to move towards making our community, our co-op, whatever. And we say co-op just because that's the common term around here, but it's technically not a co-op. The way we've structured ours is more like a homeschool community, and we'll talk more about that later. But there's a variety of ways you can structure it. And so that's when we intentionally started moving towards that. And so over this time, I've started to see a pattern or areas that need to be attended to if you want to have a successful co-op. And I think a metaphor is helpful to help us think about them. So everyone think about a favorite classic or a favorite really good book, something that just resonates with you, that makes you feel enchanted, or you just love this story. And just tell me what it is. What's your favorite story? Anne of Green Gables, okay. It can be a classic, it can be children's lit, even a fairy tale. Narnia, Pride and Prejudice, Wind in the Willows, Lord of the Rings. Cool. Lots of Narnia, yeah. I think mine is Beowulf. Anne of Green Gables, Lord of the Rings, all of the above. My favorite is every book ever. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Okay, so what do you like? What makes you love that book? If you can put it into words. Sometimes it's hard. You laugh out loud. Journey. Yeah. Perseverance in the face of adversity. You just love Anne. That character resonates with you. Why do you love Anne? What is it about her that makes you love her? Rich language, truth story, types of this world, and the next one that make it more imaginable. I like that. Yeah. Anne of Green Gables, because you learn along with her. Yeah, absolutely. Anne is so idealistic and loves beauty. She has life. She's not boring. Wrestles with what we ought to do with our influence. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. Okay, so Beowulf is my favorite, and I guess my reason for liking him, that story so much. Well, first of all, I love the setting. It makes me just feel close to the earth for some reason. I love that. And I really am intrigued by Beowulf's character. He's definitely the hero of the story, but he has problems of his own as well. And it reminds me that being heroic is possible even if you're not perfect. And that's important to me. She makes mistakes and learns from them. Good, good. Okay, so think about for a second everything that we've said here today. These stories we love, and a lot of why we love them. Sometimes it's hard to put into words, but you each said something. Truth, rich language, loves beauty. Kim, I think, said journey. All of these are like these intangible things. They're expressed through something else. But if we were just to say journey, maybe we would imagine something, but more than likely we would imagine a story, right? But just the idea of a journey, it kind of has to be embodied in something else for it to resonate with us. And this is true with all stories. There's these big ideas and these themes and these common human experiences that speak to our souls, and we just love it so much. We just want to be in its presence. This is why there are Star Wars conventions and Lord of the Rings conventions, and people like dress up like them, and like this is their hobby. I mean, they are so enchanted with that world, they want to be there. Like King Arthur. Yeah, I like that. Oh yeah, comparing him to Beowulf. So yeah, I'm tracking now. And so when we're thinking, what I guess the category or term we could give that to help us with this metaphor is theme. And there's other ways of expressing it. I like to think about the idea of the common human experience because it helps me realize how to think about theme in a way that's helpful for conversations and exploring literature. But a theme is not something that you can hold in your hands. It's not something that can be talked about if it's divorced from the story. Otherwise it becomes this, and it can be talked about in some ways, but not in the way that you guys just talked about it. You were talking about it in relationship to the story. So the theme is something that is expressed through the characters and the setting and the plot, the conflict, the way that Edmund responded to the White Witch, the way that Peter fought against the wolf. Forgive me if I'm getting my book and movie mixed up. Don't judge. And all of these things that happen in the story, the themes are expressed through them. Each element is important. Like, if you don't have characters, you don't have a story. If you don't have a plot, you don't have a story. If you don't have the setting or the conflict, you don't have a story. And if you don't have a theme, there's no unity, if there's no thread that combines it all, it's not a very interesting story. At best, it's a fragmented story. At worst, it's an incomprehensible bunch of words, And so all of these elements are absolutely essential to the whole. While some of them are specifically chosen and then expressed, and some of them have to be expressed through other things. One of the things that C.S. Lewis talks about, and I can't remember where he said this, if it was an essay or a book. Most of his essays are in book form now, but I read it on a blog post, so I can't remember. If you guys are interested in the link, I'll try to find it later. But it was a collection of advice from C.S. Lewis about writing, and some guy published a post about it. And he was saying that try to express that a man is terrible without saying he is terrible. Paint a picture that makes you think he is terrible without having to say that he is terrible. And so there's that. In the great works of literature, in the stories that we all said, we get something of Anne and that she loves beauty without anyone saying that she loves beauty. It's how she lives her life and how she does things that makes you see that and believe that and know that about her. Classical homeschooling and building a classical community is much the same way. There is a theme, and I call that the classical narrative, that is expressed through everything else that you do in your homeschool and everything else you do in your classical community. It can be talked about separately, like we're talking about these themes separately. We can talk about the idea of a journey and how it relates to this or that, or loving beauty. Oh, sorry, I need to turn my ringer off. Just forget that. But we can't talk about it outside of the story, in that it has to be expressed in the story. The classical narrative is much the same way. It includes the purpose, the philosophy, our view of God, our view of man. And we can't go into that a lot here today. But everything I'm talking about I'm talking about it in relationship to starting a classical community, but the course that I have at Expanding Wisdom, the 5 elements of classical homeschooling, that's what I'm talking about here today. So if you want to dig deeper, then you can look at that or read more about it in various posts. And I'll also refer you to other references that I'll send in the follow-up email, including the recording of this video. So the narrative is expressed throughout. It's almost, I think I would go so far as to say the classical narrative is what makes it classical education, because the other elements are what we teach, the liberal arts, the fine arts, and the sciences, how we teach, which, we can say briefly, the mimetic instruction, Socratic instruction, questioning, reading out loud, those beautiful forms of presenting or coaching or co-inquiring, which if that confuses you, we'll talk about that a little bit later too. Then we also are dealing with liturgy and logistics, the actual running of things, the flow of the day. And then there is the element of the teacher or in community. And this is where the individual mom or teacher is pursuing her own sanctification and development and a continuing education in community. There's always this tension between the one and the many, or the individual and society, but it's both. It's not one or the other. And so that last element has to do a lot with community, but also the individual. And so the classical narrative is applied and expressed through all of these things. It's a restful narrative. It's one of pursuing scole and restful learning. And so the questions we're asking is, how do I align myself with the narrative in how I teach? How do I align myself with the narrative in what I teach? How do I align myself with the narrative in how we figure out liturgy and logistics? And how do I do that in my own life, in the community I'm a part of? And so those are I think that is a really helpful question, because it guides our thinking about it. And so then the task that we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, I wouldn't say that. We're beginning to learn more about the narrative. Sometimes while we're in the process of learning, we have to rely on others that we trust to tell us, and then kind of take their word for it until we get to the point where we're learning more. And that's perfectly okay. I think that's why we have mentors and teachers and priests and pastors, so that we can rely on someone else, because a moment cannot be about everything. We cannot learn everything we need to know in this moment about, classical homeschooling. Can you sum up one more time? Yeah. The classical narrative is like theme in literature. It's the how we view man, how we view God. It's the intangible thread that runs through. It's the purpose. All of the, I think there's like 6. Andrew Kern does a really good job of talking about this. And I talk about it more in module 1 of the course. But it has about 6 parts to it. The narrative here's another way of thinking about it: worldview. You know how a book has worldview? I think that's a term we use more often. So worldview includes a certain view of God, includes a certain view of man. A worldview includes what they think about this or what they think about that. Well, that's what we call the classical, that's similar to the classical narrative. And so people, it's very common these days to say, read a book and try to discover its worldview. So the classical narrative is a particular worldview, but I don't really like that term because of what it can, I'm not going to get into why I don't like that term, because it's not important in this moment. But that's why I chose a different word. But I think that will be helpful for, does that help answer the question about, yes, okay, good. I will go on and on even after I've answered your question. And so sometimes you can just say, hey, thank you. That's enough, stop, please. Okay. And so, oh, yes. So as we are learning more, sometimes we can just kind of trust some people and let them lead us at the same time that we are continuing to learn for ourselves. So there's a give and take, you know, which is why I think it's so great that we have trustworthy people in the classical tradition that we can say, I'm just going to imitate them for a while until I know a little bit of what I'm doing. And then I can start, you know, using my own judgment some more. All right. So I want to ask a couple questions because we do have a limited time here, and I want to make sure I talk about the things that you guys feel the need to know the most. So as I gave you a brief overview of how to teach, what of the five elements, and all of these 5 elements must be addressed, and decisions have to be made about all of these elements if you are going to start a classical community. You also are asking, how do I align the course of study with the classical narrative? How do I align each element with the classical narrative? So we're asking those questions. Of those elements, which one do you feel like I need to know more about that the most right now, that you're feeling the most lack in your understanding of, or ideas, and maybe all of them? It's fine. I mean, I don't know where everyone is at. Liturgy and logistics, okay. Yeah, that usually is the one that's the make or break. What content areas you would suggest you start with a community? Okay. Content areas, okay. The 5, okay, so the classical narrative, which is like theme and literature, the worldview of the classical tradition, and then the element of the course of study, so that's answering the question, what do we teach? Then the element of classical teaching, that answers the question, how do we teach? The element of liturgy and logistics, which answers the question, how do we make this happen? What are the rhythms and the flow? And 5th is the element of the teacher and community, your own personal development, continuing education within a community. Okay. Doesn't Scholé tell you a minimum of, oh, you're talking about specifically the Scholé groups by Classical Academic Press, Cheryl? Okay. Well, it's the 7 liberal arts, which is the same thing you would want to pursue if you're pursuing a classical co-op anyway, so. All right, communicating effectively, finding people. And if those of you who are interested in learning more about Scholé groups, hold on to that question, Cheryl, till the Q&A time, and I'll be happy to share a little bit about that structure and how that's worked for us. Course of study, liturgy and logistics, and community development, teacher development, Boston. Okay, yeah, so I'm seeing liturgy and logistics and course of study probably the most, and then communication, which is a part of liturgy and logistics. Vision, classical narrative to the group, community development meeting. Mistakes to avoid. Mistakes to avoid. Don't be at this webinar and don't listen to anything I have to say. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so why don't we start with the course of study? Okay, so like I said, when you are well, let me ask you guys one more question. How many of you already have a community and you're trying to refine it? So Amy, Melissa. That's a great thing, Emily. Yeah, that's a great question. Few loose friends, okay. Okay. More in depth, okay. All right, how many of you are just about to start something brand new, don't have anything yet? This just starting this fall, okay. What to start a year from now? Okay. Okay. All right, good. All right, so when you're sitting down, you meet a friend, you're like, hey, we should start a community. We're crazy and we, you know, we want to be really busy. Let's do this. Although we don't ever think that. We just somehow forget how much work it is when we're planning, and then we're in the middle and we're like, you know. It is the reality of leading a co-op. I'll just let you know up front, it is a lot of work, but it is joyful, and there are plenty of fruits. That's pretty much how, yep, exactly. I'm just having this vision of the founding fathers sitting at a tavern, you know, planning our future as a nation. I'm like, oh, I can just imagine a bunch of homeschool moms sitting over wine saying, hey, let's start a homeschool community. Okay, on topic now, Jennifer. And you're like, okay, how do we plan? So the 5 elements are going to give you structure to what to plan. The first thing we'll talk about is the course of study. If you want to align yourself with the classical narrative, with the historical Christian classical tradition, then your course of study is already decided for you. You don't have to figure that out. You know that it is the 7 liberal arts and the 4 sciences. The question that you have to answer is, what do we want to do on Community Day? Do we want to align with a curriculum already published, or are we going to try to create our own, like crazy people, like we did? That's what you have to decide. So the first step then is, if you don't know what the 7 liberal arts and the 4 sciences are, you need to learn that. I will mention them briefly, but you'll want to, you know, do some more reading for yourself. I highly recommend The Liberal Arts Tradition by Ravi Clark, or is it Kevin Clark? It's Ravi Yan and Kevin Clark. And it's a really great introduction to the 7 liberal arts. It helps to kind of paint a vision for you. They are grammar, logic, and rhetoric, which are the language arts of the liberal arts. Oh, Cheryl's got it up. That's what it looks like. It's available through Classical Academic Press. And if you are a Scholé group, or you become a Scholé group, you get a free copy of that in your starter kit when you become a Scholé group. Yeah, so that's nice. But it's not that expensive anyway. It's still worth it. It's like $12, I think. So there's grammar, logic, and rhetoric, which are the liberal arts of the are the language arts of the liberal arts. Now, I know there's a lot of confusion around these, because there's several classical communities that talk about the grammar, logic, and rhetoric as though they are stages of development, and that is kind of the central focus, or what gives form to the classical model. And I understand where they're coming from. They were and I actually, my last Facebook Live event goes, was it my last Facebook Live event? Was it the last one, or was it the different methods? One of my Facebook Live events talks about this a little bit more in depth. It talks about the different kinds of classical homeschooling. It talks about the stages of development, where that came from, and comparing that to the liberal arts and looking at how they're the same and how they're different. It also talks about Charlotte Mason. So if that's an issue that your particular community and the people that you are serving is struggling with, I recommend listening to that. Also, yes, Cheryl said James Daniels' talk on commonplace and loving your neighbor, and it was from this past CiRCE's conference, really great. So once those are released, I would highly recommend buying those talks. And you can buy individual talks, so you don't have to buy the whole thing. And I think they're between $3 and $5 per talk. So just keep an eye out on the CiRCE page or in the CiRCE store for when that's released. So those are places to go. The other 4 liberal arts are arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and harmonics, and those are the mathematical arts. And the 7 liberal arts are the arts of truth perception. They are the skills we must learn in order to increase our ability to perceive truth. This is how it is. This is one of the ways that this is a very Christ-centered curriculum. Because who is the truth? The truth is Christ. And the more I am able to perceive him in general revelation and special revelation, and in the subjects I'm studying, the more I know him. And the more I know him, the more I have the potential to become like him and participate in his life. Of course, there is what we're doing on Sunday and through our, church year. But there's also all these other ways that education has the potential to be taken captive for the glory of God, to seek first the kingdom of God in everything. When I used to read that, I'm like, well, that's great, but how do you actually do that at school? I mean, do you just pray before your classes start? And what I love about the classical tradition is that it does that at a cellular level with everything that we're studying. And it's just wonderful. So your course of study are the 7 liberal arts, the 4 sciences, and fine arts. I would add fine arts into there, but you could consider nature study and fine arts kind of in the language arts, because it's a part of being able to apprehend the books that you read, because the central thing that you study in the language arts are the great works of literature. And we talk a lot about that in the mini course just did, how to teach the humanities. The humanities are the language arts of the liberal arts. That's what they are. And I am recording those, so if you're interested and you didn't get a chance to enroll in the class, there's ways to get a hold of them later on. Okay, so let's see, it's 3:40. Okay, so if you need to know more, so the main decision you're making with the course of study is what do you want to do on Community Day. For our Community Day, Dara, do you want to tell them what we have, how we chose what to do and what we chose?
Well, the real story of how we chose is we picked what we had the hardest time teaching at home, and started doing that at Community Day. Jen had done the Circe apprenticeship, so she taught Lost Tools of Writing, and I was game to learn how to teach writing to the younger kids. So we just took writing, which was one of our difficult things, and literature for the sake of being able to discuss it in class. And started with those 2 things primarily, and then theater and nature study we started doing together. For theater, we started out with just reading portions of Shakespeare and having the kids memorize little pieces of it. And then for nature study, we would just do nature walks and practice some drawing skills. So yeah, we started out just figuring out what we needed the most. And then when our group grew significantly, we added history as well so that we could do all the humanities together. Because we do a 4-year history cycle in our co-op, and so everything that we do correlates to that time period in history. So the literature selections would be either from that time period or about that time period, and the writing assignments are done about either the literature or the history readings. So all those humanities are connected and have lots of interrelationships with each other. So yeah, that's what we do for our mornings at co-op, and then our afternoons we still do theater and nature study / art. So that's how we chose what we do, but you could pick whatever things are more difficult for you. You could do math, you could do science. It's really up to you which things you'd like to do. You could even do surveys among your group and see who needs what the most, or see what people are able to teach what things and go based on that too. So it's definitely subjective as far as what you do on your Community Day. But like, for instance, we hope to add Latin in the future, but we don't have a Latin teacher yet, so that's just in the queue. So yeah, it's up to your group to decide what works for you on that.
Thank you. I'm typing this out, turned it into record. Okay, yes, thank you, Dara. And one of the things I love about the way we do theater is that it's really an extension of rhetoric, because for those who know a little bit about rhetoric, there are 5 canons. The first 3 canons seem to be taught best in a literature / writing kind of class. The last 2 canons can be integrated into that, but it's also the perfect marriage with theater because it's about memory and presentation. Isn't that what theater is about? And so the theater teacher kind of takes the reins of coaching in those memory and presentation skills, and then we expect that they would also apply those skills when they do presentations in the humanities class. And we decided that we weren't going to add things unless it fit with the 7 liberal arts. And so we've had people give us suggestions, oh, I want this, or, oh, I want that. But until we are addressing all the 7 liberal arts in our co-op, which I don't think we will ever have math classes. I can't imagine that would work. I mean, maybe it would one day, but we're just not going to do anything else. And we've decided that is our focus, which brings up a good point. I'll go ahead and talk about purpose here before we go on, because it's a good segue to liturgy and logistics. And this is also the foundation for cultivating community, is that when you have to decide, and I'm assuming that everyone that's in here is going to be the leader of a community or is a leader in a community. Am I assuming, right? I'm just going to speak as though that is correct. Is that you have to know what your purpose is ahead of time. And then you have to figure out how to communicate it very clearly. I wrote an article for the Scholé Group's blog. They titled it, because I'm horrible at titling things, they threw my title away. They entitled it Growing Gracefully, and I can't remember the subtitle, but you can go and check that out. And it talks a lot about this idea. The whole article is about how to help families who are new to classical education. As a leader in your community, how do you help new families? What can you do to help teach them about the classical tradition and be there for them? So I encourage you to read that. Also, and so part of figuring out what your purpose is doing your own study about what the classical tradition is all about and what you're planning on doing. If you're going to be a community that is focusing on the 7 liberal arts, well, then you need to say that explicitly. It's fine to say, I tend to err more towards the abstract and the philosophical statements, but people are confused by those. I used to talk a lot about, when I was speaking to potential families, we're pursuing truth, goodness, and beauty in a restful way. Well, what does that even mean? If somebody hasn't been around the classical community, they have no idea what you're talking about. But at the same time, if they're a Christian, they're not going to disagree with you. They like the way that sounds. That sounds wonderful to them, but they don't know what you mean by that. And so you need to clarify that. And so I realized that anytime I made an abstract statement, I had to make a very clear statement afterwards. So you can go onto our community page, PaideaFellowship.com, and it's right there on the front page. And that's how, and so we have the beautiful abstracting, but immediately after that, we serve families from 5th to 12th grade primarily, and we focus on the 7 liberal arts. It's said more eloquently over there. But like for our community, we wanted to help coach skills. Anyone can present knowledge. You can read a book no matter who you are. You could play an audiobook. You could have people look at a piece of art. But the thing that was hardest for us, and when Dara and I, the question we asked is, okay, well, what don't we get done at our house, or what do we think we're doing a bad job of at our house? That's what we're going to do at our community. Well, most of that centered around coaching skills. We did not have the skill to coach, that we did not know how to do that. And so we wanted our community to focus on coaching the skills of the 7 liberal arts, specifically the language arts. So we focus on 5th through 12th grade students, helping to coach them in reading, writing, and discussion skills. That's our primary focus. And we say it very clear, just like that. Yeah, well, we say 7 because we want to, I felt like it was important to give them the vision that there's not just 3, especially with all the confusion around today about thinking that the classical tradition is just the language arts. Yeah. And so we mention it, so they have the greater vision. Yeah, and that's the cool thing about the classical tradition. I don't have to figure out my curriculum. Like, it's already chosen for me. I just decide which resources to use, and then which ones we're going to do on Community Day. The other thing we did is we during parent training, we do give an overview of all 7 liberal arts, and we assume that they would want to pursue all 7 in their homes. The ones we're not doing on Community Day, they would want to do that when they're at home. And so we give suggestions for trustworthy curriculum that address the other liberal art that they can choose for their yes, exactly, right. We're just there to help them. And and that goes back to this communicating our purpose. That's the other part of communicating, is when, and there's so many directions I could go and talk about liturgy and logistics. So Dara, you might have to interrupt me and help me figure out what to say and what not to say. Is that once you have decided what your purpose is and what you're doing, then the other big part that is really, really important in communicating is deciding exactly what parents are going to be doing. What is their role? Do you want a drop-off program? Do you want a program where they don't really, that they're there all day? Do you want some combination in between? How do you want the parents to relate to you? How do you want the parents to relate to each other? What kind of community do you want to build? And you know, that's gonna affect things. Some people want more of a school feeling environment, and others do not want that. But you can't just express that in abstract terms. You have to say specifically, this is our vision, and this is what it means logistically. You must volunteer this many times in the year. You must be here or there. So you do the visionary statement that you hope inspires people to do all the work you would hope they would do, and then you give the micromanaging statement that says, these are the things you're required to do, otherwise you'll have me to deal with. I mean, we don't say that, but you really do have to do that, unfortunately. And I don't think it's because people aren't willing to rule themselves and be responsible, but we're homeschooling moms. We're busy. Our minds are splintered in so many directions, and it's a way to love your families to be very clear with them about what they need to do. Don't ever assume that they know what they need to do. Always communicate it very, very clearly. Okay, cool. So, so in terms of liturgy and logistics, this, the decisions you make there are how do the structures that you need to keep track of everybody, how to register, what the flow of the year will be, how many weeks do you meet, what does the day look like, when do you start, when do you end, how will you transition to classes? Will you be with the same teacher all day, or will you switch teachers? What do you do during lunch? What kind of volunteers do you need during lunch and at this part of the day or the other part of the day? What other volunteers do you need for the whole year to make it work? And depending on the kind of community you want will determine how many volunteers you need and what are the more fitting flow of the day. Dar, do you want to talk about how we did lunch last year and how we're making changes, like some of the lessons we've learned with liturgy and logistics and volunteers and all that?
Sure. So a lot of our learning we do by making mistakes and then trying to fix them. So first, let me tell you what the structure of our day was yesterday, and then I'll tell you what worked well and what didn't. So we meet in a small Presbyterian church. The sanctuary of this church is actually over 100 years old, and then the rest was built on. So we have a beautiful little space there. But what we do is the kids arrive by 9 o'clock, and we meet in the sanctuary for just a very small, what do you even call that? I forget the word. Just a short little greeting the children, saying a prayer. Then we sing, I guess that'd be our liturgy. Then we sing the doxology and do any announcements that need to be done. And then they're dismissed by class, youngest to oldest. Then they go off to their classrooms, and then they have, in our case, a 3-hour humanities class. In the case of the younger children, the mentor is allowed to build in as many recesses or breaks as she wants to. Even through middle school, I don't know if high school does or not, but even through middle school, we have an official snack time in the middle because I had mostly boys last year, and no middle school boys cannot go from 9 till noon without any food. If they don't eat it, they will talk about it the whole time. So we would just take a short break in the middle, and that just gave them, it was like 15 minutes to grab their snack and chit chat, because these are homeschool kids. Admit it, that all they want to really do there is talk all afternoon. So then we would come back in and finish class, and then at noon we would break for lunch. And we had everyone meeting in the fellowship hall for lunch last year. And then after that, we would have a quick cleanup and then try to get the kids off to the 2 separate classrooms that were for art and theater. Now, what didn't end up working well with that last year is that we had 60 kids and teachers, well, 60 people, including teachers and whatnot, packed into the fellowship hall at lunchtime, and it was loud, and it was a little chaotic, and we ended up with crumbs everywhere, and that's where the art class ended up meeting. So we struggled with having people there available to clean up after lunch so that we could get art class started and all of that. So this next year, we're going to have the classes eat in their own classrooms. And I mean, we will try to have volunteers available to help spell off for the younger kids, teachers, if they need the break a little bit, or if they have young children of their own that need to have lunch with them or whatever. But we're going to do that, and then each class is going to be responsible for cleaning up their own space. That way, they'll have been in the same room all morning, and they'll clean up their own space from that entire time period, from both their class and their lunch. So then after they eat, as soon as cleanup is done, and this can be however fast they want, they're allowed to go outside and play. In our case, they love to play football. So if the middle schoolers, for instance, want to eat in 15 minutes and then quickly clean up their room and go outside for the rest of the hour, that's fine. The only requirement, of course, is that everyone pitches in with cleanup. So that's what we're going to try differently this next year, and we'll see how it goes, but I'm anticipating that it's going to go a lot more smoothly based on the couple of times that we did that last year.
Yeah.
So is that all, or Jen, did you have any?
That's great. I would add to that, the other thing that we were trying to do, one of the things we realized is that we really only can get really improve in one area each year. So I can't try to be epic in the course of study, in classical teaching, in liturgy and logistics, and personal development and community all at the same time. You really have to choose one. Last year, we didn't specifically choose one, but it ended up being the course of study. And we started making some strides in community. We got really good at that last year, I think. I'm really proud of what we did there. This year, we have specifically chosen that we want to get really good at liturgy and logistics, which means restful learning in all the other areas. So even though I'm not specifically addressing course of study or classical teaching, the main question I'm asking as the director this year is, what are the things we need to do with our teaching to make it restful, with our routine and schedule to make it restful, with this to make it restful? Because liturgy and logistics is all wrapped up in the idea of restful, or for me, I really believe that, for the Christian classical community anyway. And so the other thing that this eating in their rooms provides is the teacher, like I know our 5th and 6th grade mentor, she's planning on letting them all eat together. She might light a candle, make it really beautiful, a shared meal together, and she's going to read to them while they eat. They're going to eat in 15 minutes. That's not that long to do something like that. And then when they're done, they'll clean up, and then they get to solely enjoy. The other thing that it won't do is we would have kids that wouldn't eat because they were so excited to go play. So we kept having to chase down kids. Yep, mine too. Our kids were always the worst. They're like, oh, our parents are the directors. We can do whatever we want. Got to watch those directors' kids. It's true. So it's solving so many problems. But that came from workplace bullying, right? That came from asking the question, how do we make this more restful? If we hadn't have asked that question, we would have never come up with the idea to eat lunch in their room. You know, asking the question, what is not restful about the way this year went? So, okay, somebody said, do most people show up? Yeah, most people show up on time. You know, we have some stragglers, and sometimes we would start late, and we tended to be a little bit laid back. Oh my gosh, I just saw a mouse. Oh man, sorry, I really hate mice. Okay, get it together, Jennifer. Okay. Oh my gosh. All right. It's okay. Okay, one second. Okay, I'm okay.
So to answer the question about absences,
Thank you.
the question, how do you deal with absences? We typically didn't have people skipping just because they were busy. We had, you know, people go out of town occasionally or would get sick. We actually took a whole month off. Well, I think it was a month, or at least a good couple weeks last year, because everybody got the flu. And so since the teachers couldn't teach and the kids couldn't attend, we just took a whole period off as a rest because we all just needed to recover. But we haven't had a lot of families say they're just simply too busy. So we haven't really encountered that yet, or at least if that was the case, they called in sick, so we didn't know. But yeah, I mean, we tried to make it an environment that everybody really wants to come to and make it fun. So I don't know. We didn't have a lot of that. What do you think, Jen?
I agree with you. I think the other thing is we said from the onset, and this was especially true for 7th through 12th grade, that is their history, literature, and writing. And they had to agree to not enroll their student in any other humanities course because, first of all, it would be too much. It would be stressful for that child. But if they were choosing to be a part of our community, especially for 7th through 12th grade, they were choosing to have that be their history, literature, and writing. And so when that's how they view it, they're not going to miss, because then that means the parent would have to figure out what to do and all that. With your Shakespeare group last fall. Oh yeah, and I actually can see that happening. People, even though the arts are so vital to the classical tradition, so many people view them as electives and like they're just optional. What I would do, and this is what we ended up doing in that situation, is one of the things you can do with logistics is have a community agreement, and we make everyone sign it. I know some people don't like the sound of that, but it's communicate the love and the beauty, but then do the micromanaging part. And I would list in there, you must agree to attend each week unless there is some emergency. We can't do this without community. So make sure you communicate what kind of thing this is. This is the kind of thing that we rely on everyone. So if you foresee you not being able to keep your commitment each year or each week to be here, then of course, barring sickness or emergencies, then this might not be the best group for you. And really, the way to do it so that you're not upset with people and find yourself feeling hurt or resentful is to really seek to understand your people. Truly make the questions be like, how can I understand you? What exactly are you looking for? And then help them see whether you meet their needs or not. If they want a lot of flexibility, then they should not be a part of a community. When you are a part of a community, you're saying no to other things and you're aligning yourself with somebody else. And they need to be willing to do that. Otherwise, they just shouldn't be a part of a community. What a better option for them would be to find a field trip group. They would find that very life-giving. And so you almost are like a doctor in a way where you prescribe things. You can take that attitude, prescribe for them what you think would be the best fit for hey, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? I'm afraid that you might feel frustrated if you were in this environment because we really aren't flexible, but really just take that loving approach and it solves the problem before it even starts, in my experience. This isn't going to be for everyone, Anne. Yes, exactly. Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that. I found, and I don't know how this happens, but sometimes groups will be like freaking out and like nervous about making sure that, oh, they have to like our group and join us or whatever. And you have to release that. You have to release that and let it grow how it's going to grow. If there's only going to be 5 people, then you have to get to a place where you're okay with that and you're comfortable with that. I think the hardest time to do that is when you're wanting it to be big enough so your older kids have more community. And I remember experiencing wanting to not let that go, which is probably why I didn't close. I think I left registration open longer than Dara would have liked. And she's like, okay, is registration really still open? And I'm like, yeah, we just need more people. Because, and I learned my lesson. Sorry, Dara.
All's well that ends well.
Yeah. Has it end well, though? I don't know. So there's, okay. All right. So go ahead.
Someone's just asking, if someone insists they're a right fit, how do you say no? Can you tell them a little bit about our mandatory information meetings?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So we have a process for having people apply to our group, and it used to be really loose. and it's gotten stricter over the last couple years. We've realized that, the first thing is that we don't just have our registration link on our website. They have to either meet with me individually, and now that we have a leadership team, they could meet with any of the leadership team, or they have to, or they have to attend a community meeting, or one of our community days, and see what it's like. And we have a list of questions we ask them. Just like get to know you questions. Who are you? What's your history with homeschooling? How do you see yourself fitting in with the Charlotte Mason classical philosophy? What do you know about that? And we just listen to them. And so we ask more questions a lot of times than we answer. I mean, we definitely answer a lot of questions, but we really ask a lot of questions. And then so then as you're listening to them, you will hear if there's something that's dissonant, that's not harmonizing with the way you do things. And then you just bring it up. You're like, wow, that's wonderful. I heard that you mentioned this, and I just wanted to make sure you knew this about us. So, because I want to make sure that you totally love your experience here. And then I would go into explaining that, what you said about the classical tradition or this, I just want to share with you, this is how we do things. This is really important to us. And I would be worried that might, I wouldn't use the word cramp your style, but you get what I'm trying to say, how you're hearing them. But the thing is, you have to have a specific reason why you think they're not a good fit. Sometimes our emotions are just reacting. Like you need to be able to say specifically, I noticed you said this. Let me tell you a little bit more about what we do. How do you think that will work with your family? I want to make sure that you really feel comfortable here, because this will be your home. You have to be happy here too. And I would hate for you to not be happy with us. You can always put it on yourself rather than saying, I don't think you are a good fit. You can say, I don't think we are a good fit because of these reasons. Never put it on them. Always put it on yourself, because you're the leader. You can handle, putting some slack, on yourself, because you can be confident in that. It will also show that they are loved. Show them that you love them, that you care about them, because you want what's best for them. It's not that, oh, I don't like you, you're not Charlotte Mason enough, or whatever. It's that you're seeing something there. At the same time, someone might be brand new. And so when somebody knows nothing about classical education, if I see their eyes light up when I talk about the philosophy of classical education, I will still allow them to join because they want it. And so I just let them know, this is what we're all about. Is this something that you want to align yourself with? And if they say yes, I have to take them at their word. If they aren't embodying that in their homeschool right now, that's okay. There was a time I didn't embody certain things, but somebody had to lead me, somebody had to take my hand, and that's where continuing education comes in. Having a culture where learning is the norm. So we have, the way that we address that in our community is that we call it philosophy potluck. Everyone that's joining our community the coming up year, they bring a dish, and I talk about our philosophy of education. It's a great way to start the conversation. When you're talking about the classical narrative, it's a very difficult thing to talk about because it's a very philosophical conversation. And depending on people's past experiences and where they're from, they may have no frame of reference for understanding the words you're using if you talk about the classical narrative in that way. I find it's much better to use a story, and you can totally copy me because it worked. I got the idea from somebody else. But what we do is I read the story of the Nightingale. I do this almost every workshop I do because it's so effective and it communicates the classical narrative so well. I read the fairy tale. It takes 15 to 17 minutes. And it's the Nightingale in the Yellow Fairy book, edited by Andrew Lang. And I read it, and then I ask a bunch of narration questions like, so what was the story about? Who were the characters in it? How did this character relate to everyone else? How did this character relate to everyone else? Who did you identify with the most? Who did you think was the most virtuous person? I just ask lots of questions about who the people were, what the setting was, and how they related to each other. And then I transitioned. I said, okay, so what if I said that the Nightingale was like classical education and the mechanical Nightingale, and sometimes I won't say the part about the mechanical Nightingale, but I will say, what if I told you that the Nightingale is like classical education? What would you say? And then we continue to talk. And this is where it gets really active. This is where everyone really begins to talk. And then they start seeing how each character represents how we relate to education in different ways. And then how the mechanical Nightingale represents modern progressive education and isn't the real thing and can't offer what the real Nightingale offers. And I always cry because it's the most beautiful thing. They are experiencing the narrative. And that's why the narrative is hard to talk about, because the narrative cannot be passed on by me telling you about it. You must experience the narrative. You can only experience the theme in literature by experiencing the other elements. You can only experience the narrative, like really experience it, by experiencing it. You can talk about it, but it means nothing if it hasn't touched your heart. It means nothing. Just like people can talk about Jesus all day long, but unless they meet him, unless they participate in his life, they cannot know him. Not in the way, maybe there's some intellectual way they can know him, but not as a real person. And the narrative is the same way. It must be experienced. And so that is how you talk about your purpose and philosophy. You find a way for them to experience it. Feel totally free to steal, and it's not stealing. We don't own any of these ideas, So use the Nightingale if you can't think of anything else. And then, I feel like, how they say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, I feel like a teacher should read a fairy tale a day. Like that, we should do that. And our kids love them, so it's super easy to do that. You can just read a fairy tale every night to your kids. Or let that be your morning reading or something like that. But there's so much fodder there and ideas for analogies and metaphors, because that's essentially how you'll communicate those more philosophical things. Even if you don't use a fairy tale, using a metaphor. Like I used at the beginning of this class, we used the metaphor of a story and the elements of literature, something you guys knew about and could think about, and then I compared it to something you didn't know about yet. And that's how you do it. Oh, well, I just demonstrated it to you in this class. And actually, where is it? I do this. This is the introductory module for the 5 elements of classical homeschooling. I read the Nightingale, we have a discussion, and we talk about metaphors in the first module. So there's that too. And I bet there's a recording somewhere of me doing it, because I do it all the time. But it's exactly what we did in here. I started out with a metaphor. I asked you guys questions. We talked about it. What you're doing is you're inviting your people from what they don't know to what they will know. Or you're inviting your people from what they do know to what they don't know. And then by talking about what they already know, then they're able to connect. It's either an experience, a metaphor, or a story that are most useful for that to happen. Okay. Did I miss any questions that I should be? So I think I answered the question about what questions haven't. We talked a little bit about liturgy and logistics. Okay, I think that's probably where most of the questions will be, because there's so many specifics there. So why don't we take a minute, interview our kids, and then we'll spend the rest of the time doing Q&A. How does that sound? Sound good? Okay. And I will say this. When it comes to building community, I want to refer you to the article I wrote for Scholé groups, because a couple people asked that question, and I wouldn't say anything different here today than what's in that article. And that way we can have more time for Q&A. So just go read that article about growing gracefully from the Scholé Groups blog. So when you go to scholégroups.com, I think it's under resources, and then find where it says blog. And it's like the second article down at this point. So let me go get my kids, and I'll be right back. Hey, Sierra. Katie, are y'all ready to be interviewed? Come on. No, Sierra, I said you're going first. Come on, come on. It won't take that long. It's the mouse is behind the fridge. It's not gonna come get you. It's scared of you. It's more scared of you than we are of it. Says the person who stands on the chairs when she sees it. All right, come here. Oh, she's fixing her hair.
No, my hair fell out. My hair will fall out. So I'm putting it here. I'm putting it here.
Okay. Do you want to bring the chair around, or do you just want to sit right here?
Okay.
Okay.
Boom.
Okay, come a little closer. Okay, all right, sit up straight. All right, everyone, this is Sierra, my oldest daughter. And so why don't you tell us what, so last year at co-op, what class were you in?
I did.
The 5th and 6th grade.
Yeah.
So what grade were you in last year? 5th grade. Can you guys hear her? Okay, good. All right. So what were some of your favorite things about our community?
Well, I liked that I already knew people
Mm-hmm.
there, and I liked art.
Why did you like art?
Because I already knew the teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and she was really nice.
So why did it matter that you already knew her?
Because since she already knew me, she was my teacher. She was the teacher for art both 2 years ago. So she already knew that when I try to start a drawing, it's like hard to like just start it, but when I get started, it's easier. So she already knew that, so she helped me start it. So that made it much nicer and easier.
Excellent. Okay. So what else? What are some other favorites?
I liked theater. Theater was fun.
Okay. So what did you like about that?
Well, I like the games we played in theater.
Oh, really?
Because actually most of them, so me and my friend, friend / acquaintance / whatever, she went to this other theater I did. So games we played there, she could help me explain them at our co-op. It was so fun.
Awesome. Okay. Anything else?
I liked writing and rhetoric and Century Book and Commonplace.
Okay. So what did you like about writing and rhetoric?
It's fun.
So you were telling me about the character thing that you guys did.
Oh, I love that. It's so fun.
And she really loved it. Not only did she love it, but she started doing it at home because she loved it so much. Like just that's fun. It is fun.
So I got to like
Yeah, go ahead. She comes by it honestly. Which book? Oh, I don't. Hold on.
Found it.
Okay. Well, yeah. Just talk about it. It might take too long to try to find
I'm
it.
not gonna. I know exactly where it is.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna explain it.
Well, just tell them like you told me earlier. What did you like about it?
So what we got to do is so there was a list of it was asking you questions about what your character could be, and you filled in the blanks,
Mhm.
and it made it easier, and it was really fun to do the characters. I made an elf.
You made an elf.
Someone else made a 2-foot-tall, 600-pound person.
Whoa, that's crazy.
That's funny.
Okay, so what are some you mentioned you liked Century Notebooks and Commonplacing.
Yeah.
What did you like about those?
Okay, so Century Book, we got to color, but I only liked when we colored in the class because when we didn't do it in the class, everyone always forgot.
Oh. Okay.
Unless there are certain people who forgot. And we did competition with it, and I didn't like that. We did like a competition to see whose was the best. And I didn't like that because it was encouraging some people, but it made most people feel bad.
Okay, so that was something you didn't like about that. Okay. Is there anything else that you didn't like or something you wish would have been different?
Well, for literature, actually, I wish we read more in the class.
Mhm.
together because that would have been really fun.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. That's
Brings me to come, I think.
I really liked it because I got to I love reading. First of all, that's awesome. And then when you what you call when you read I got it.
Hurry.
When you read the book, you get to. It was fun because we were reading The Hobbit and we got to pick our favorite quotes, and
You like
I
that?
liked a lot of my quotes.
Good.
But the hardest part was at the end of the year we had to pick our one favorite quote from The Hobbit. I didn't pick one. I picked like 4.
Oh,
I
you
couldn't-
cheated.
No, I wouldn't call it cheating so much as bending the rules.
Oh my gosh, you're fired. Get out of here now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Pray for me, sisters. Thank you. They're clapping. Okay.
Garrett.
All right, this is Katie. She was in, you probably have to stand up. So she was in the first and second grade class last year. So Katie, what was your favorite thing about co-op last year?
Recess.
Recess. Why was that fun?
Because I could see my friends that were in different classes.
Oh, so you like that was awesome. Okay, did you have any other favorite things?
Lunch.
Lunch? Nobody likes lunch. Okay, anything else?
My morning
What did you like about your morning class?
class.
Everything.
Everything.
Everything? Was there like a favorite thing about your morning class?
Well, the book reading because they read Toad and Frog.
That's a fun book. Cool. Who is your favorite character?
Frog.
Frog. Why did you like Frog the best?
Because he wasn't the afraid one,
Ah.
like Toad.
Oh man. Okay, cool. So is there anything you didn't like or you wish was different?
No.
Nope. All right. High five. Thank you, ma'am. All right. You can go now. All right. Okay. So Garrett,
Hello.
our resident, Dara, do you want to question him or do you want?
You're his teacher. I'm gonna let you do it.
So Garrett's been my student for 3 years, and he was in 10th grade last year. So you'll have a high school perspective here. So Garrett, what did you like most about our homeschool community?
Well, I'm in agreement with Katie. Recess. That was great. To meet other families, hang out there.
Mhm.
That's great.
Yeah, so the community.
Hmm.
So what about like so specifically then about the morning? What were some life-giving and just enjoyable things for you in the morning?
The writing class is also pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
There's some interesting things
Mm-hmm.
that can be learned from that.
Yes, it is true. All right. Why? Why did you like that the most? What do you think? What was it about it?
It has a lot to do with logic sometimes and patterns. I like patterns. So kind of helped me understand some more patterns and how some people think and some perspectives, and yeah, that was great.
Cool. And you grew so much this last year in writing. It was incredible. It was amazing watching you grow. I'm proud of you, Garrett. All right, what about the afternoon and the theater and the art?
Well, to be honest, on the art, I wasn't exactly challenged and there was nothing new learned,
Mm-hmm.
but I did the projects as well as I could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Garrett is an excellent artist. He carries a sketchbook with him everywhere he goes and is, very, very skilled. So That would
I
make
think I
sense.
appreciate most about the art class is being at the top of the class, you could say.
Yeah.
Not official, but
Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay. Is there anything that you found challenging or you wish could have been different about your experience in co-op last year, or really as you reflect on the last 3 years?
probably mostly the trips. When we go out of town, I get stuck behind a little.
You got
And
stuck behind?
yeah, I got like a week behind and then I catch up.
Oh, I thought you were like stuck behind out of town. I'm like, don't say that in public. Did I actually?
No, I wasn't left behind.
Okay.
Left behind in the school schedule.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good feedback. I didn't even realize that. Okay. All right. All right. Any
Reading's a
other?
little heavy though.
The what? The reading? Yeah.
Yeah, got plenty to do.
I was expecting you to say that. Okay, good. All right. Well, is there any other thoughts that you had you want to share just about your experience at
that's it.
co-op? Okay. Thank you, Garrett.
Yep.
All right. Okay. And there you have it. 3 of our community members, children's, and some of their thoughts on their experiences. So now I'm going to open the floor to any questions you all have. So yeah, we can spend the rest of the time here that we have together answering and asking questions. And we have a good while, like we have quite a bit of time for questions. So please, anything that's on your mind, feel free to ask.
Can I ask a question? Is it okay if I do it via video?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm faster at talking than typing.
Yes.
For right now our group is very small and there's like 4 families and 2 of us will be teaching and the other 2 will be attending and maybe helping. But if it ever gets bigger, do you have your teachers teach a specific area and with different ages, or do you have them stay with a specific age group?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Dara, do you want to take this or do you want me to?
Sure. In all honesty, I actually kind of missed half of that. I was having my kids help me get dinner started.
Okay, I can take it then. That's fine. All right. So so what we do is we have a 1st and 2nd grade class, and so we have 3 main parts of the day. We have the Humane Letters class, which is in the morning, and then there's lunchtime, and then in the afternoon we have nature art. We call it nature art because we're teaching art through nature study, but I guess we could just call it nature study. It's just the name we gave it. And then theater. So theater and art in the afternoon. In the morning time, we divide, grouped the children according to their ages. So we have 1st and 2nd graders together, 3rd and 4th graders together, 5th and 6th graders together, 7th and 8th, and then 9th through 12th is together. Usually when you begin a community, it takes a while for the older classes to grow because people want to make sure that you're legit and that you're not going to like mess up their kids' high school transcript because, you know, they have to fill that out. And so they want to know that you have a reputation as being a quality community. So just know that ahead of time. If you want high schoolers, it's going to take some time to get a decent sized group. And then, so in the morning, we have 1 Humane Letters teacher, 1 mentor for each of those groups. So there's a 1st and 2nd grade mentor, Humane Letters mentor that's with them the whole year. And then the same for 3rd and 4th, 5th, 6th, for each of the letters classes. So that 1 mentor is with those kids the whole year. The only exception to that is that in high school, we teach the lost tools of writing. And so there's level 1 and level 2, and we now have students ready for level 2. So I'm teaching the high school Humane Letters class and level 2, but Dara is actually going to teach the level 1. So we're still going to be talking about all the same literature and history, but we'll just split up for 45 minutes to an hour to teach the writing lesson, coaching the specific skill of writing, and then we'll come back together so everyone can get what they need for writing. And then in the afternoon, how we structure it is we have 2 theater teachers and 2 nature art teachers. We have a lower theater teacher, which is they serve the 1st through 4th grade kids. And so the 1st and 2nd grade class will go to theater, while the 3rd and 4th grade class is in nature art. And then after an hour, they'll switch. And the same teacher who taught the 1st and 2nd graders will then teach the 3rd and 4th graders. We found that that was a little bit more helpful structure for the afternoon for those kinds of things. And then the same in the older. We have an upper school a theater teacher and an upper school art teacher, and they do the same switching. We have 5th through 8th graders together for upper school theater and art, which then makes it a bigger class. But we then pair them up together. And in theater, it's not as big of a deal for them because they meet in the sanctuary, and the nature of theater is of such that you can have a larger group and it's good. With nature art, it does take a little bit more creativity. I think there's 19 kids when we put those 2 classes together. So we'll end up pairing them up. So then it will be like 9 kids, the pair working as one, to make it more restful and making sure everyone gets the attention they need. So yes, so that's how we divide it up. And then we have, of course, a host of volunteers. We've over the last 3 years, we've figured out the volunteers that our community needs for what we're trying to do. So we have some classes that have assistants while other classes don't. Some classes need them, other classes don't. Then we have lunch and recess monitors, and we have, several different, and that's specific to each community. Based on what you're doing will determine the kinds of volunteers that you need. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. So Amber says, I love the statement of faith your community has. Was it that a problem ever around here? Only community has a very restrictive statement of faith. Also, how do you handle situations where a teacher really isn't going along with classical methods and teaching? They would not be hired if they were not going to teach classically. I have the mentors fill out an application, and they have to agree to teach in classical methods before they're ever allowed to be a mentor. And which is why I charge tuition, because I want, and pay the mentors, because that brings the position a little higher, I think, in the minds of the person, and they know that a little more is going to be expected of them. And I'm not willing to sacrifice that. We are contemplating, because now that we're a Scholé group, there's a fee for that, and we don't want to overwhelm our families. We don't overwhelm ourselves, because finances was one of the reasons we started in the beginning. And so we are wrestling through how to handle that the following year, because we know we need the support in the larger community that Scholé Groups offers. It's very helpful to us, and it takes a lot of stress off in many ways. But we have to figure that out. So we don't know the answer to that yet, like how we're going to handle that next year, but it's something we'll be talking about over the course of the year, and maybe we'll have another webinar next year and give you updates about how we've done things. And then in terms of the statement of faith, it's never been a problem. We say from the onset, if you're not okay with this, then go away. I mean, we don't really say it like that. We would never say it like that, but we do say, you can expect that your teachers or mentors could be Catholic, Protestant, or Orthodox. We value an ecumenical feel, so somebody who's not okay with that will not come visit our community. And so they just won't, because they won't feel comfortable with it. We've not had a problem with it, and I think it's because we say that from the onset, so anyone who joins our community is okay with it. So. All right, it hasn't been a problem up to Dara's answering it. Sorry. Okay. All right, could you be more specific about why you think it's worth to be an official Scholé group? Sure, yeah. Okay, so when we first started out, we were just us being together, just because it was easier. And then when we grew really big, we were wrestling with the idea of, we didn't know Scholé groups existed yet, and we were seeing how there was this need for other groups that were like this, that were marrying, were embracing a fuller 7 liberal arts course of study and all of that, with Charlotte Mason's methods, just seeing them all as harmonious. And so we were like, oh, well, we should put something together to help other communities start, so they, would know what to. And so we were contemplating that, but then we found out about Scholé groups. And when we met with Dr. Perrin, it was like literally everything everything he said was exactly what we believe and exactly what we've been doing. Everything. It was almost eerie. It was, I mean, really, it was crazy. Everything was exactly the same. And so we went back and forth about, okay, so what are the benefits? You know, we would have to pay a little bit, but then we would also get a discount on their products, which we were already using their products. So every community member would get 25% off everything at Classical Academic Press, except for the stuff that's outsourced. Like, I think like Singapore Math, you couldn't get 25% off, or the Veritas stuff you couldn't. But everything they publish, you can get a discount. Then you also have complete access to their Classical U, which is this, it's like an online teacher training. And so that element of the teacher and community, that was like a perfect solution to that. Yes, I could, you know, we have we may read a book together. We can encourage each other to go to this conference or that conference or read this book. But to have something that was kind of central to our culture and connected to the Scholé groups, communicated much more loudly, this is what we do. We learn together. We grow in the skills of teaching, you know, and so it helped with that element so much in a way that we hadn't had success with yet. And so that was that's huge. It also gives us an opportunity to meet with other directors. And when you are a director, it is lonely, I will tell you. It's one of the first 2 years we didn't have a leadership team. I was the director, and then I just talked with Dara about everything. We didn't even formally call her a co-director. And I wasn't even formally calling myself a director. We were just doing life. We were trying to make it happen. And I will say last year, we didn't have a leadership team last year because we grew from 8 families to 25 families, and I didn't know how much work that would be. And it was, I wanted to quit. I mean, it was awful. I actually ended up in the hospital with anxiety attacks because it was so bad. And a lot of that was my own failure to reach out to my friends and ask for help. And I was trying to make everything perfect, and I was trying to do it all on my own, and I was only focusing on the ideal instead of reminding myself that there's the realness of today. There was there's a real and there is an ideal. Of course, we're not going to pretend there's not a standard, but there is a reality to what we can do in the moment. And we have to be willing to say, okay, this is the ideal, but this is as far we can get towards that in the moment. And so having the leadership team is absolutely important. And so Scholé groups, how they help with that is they have a Scholé handbook. They also give suggestions for how to organize your community. There's the forum. And so you have this much larger community of people that can be there for you, that can support you, that can give you ideas, that can tell you you're being dumb when you're being dumb, like trying to lead a group of 25 families without a leadership team, kind of dumb. And then you can make more progress, and you can avoid making some of the mistakes that you would inevitably make if you did not have people around you helping you. And the staff at CAP is so generous and lovely to work with. They really want your success. They want the Christian classical renewal to spring forth, and that's why they do this. It's evident in everything they do. And so when we finished the conversation, when we realized we need to be a part of a larger community, one of the premises of classical education is this idea of piety, of aligning ourselves with something that has gone before us. If I'm aligning myself with the classical tradition. So a very real, embodied way for me to do that is to align myself with another community, to align myself with an overseeing organization that I'm subject to. And I'm not subject to them in the same way that other communities who create lots of communities are. A lot of it I'm putting on myself, in that I'm saying it helps me to know that I am accountable to somebody. I do much better, and I do much better work. My work is of greater quality when I'm accountable to somebody else. And so in terms of what they require that you register with them, and that you are pursuing a course of study of the 7 liberal arts. That doesn't mean that you have to teach all 7 liberal arts. at your community. You can pick and choose, but the idea has to be communicated that this is what you guys are all about. Like you could, so like what we do these certain things at our community, but then we just let people know, if you're pursuing a Severn Liberal Arts, these are the other things you ought to attend to in your homeschool. And that is completely sufficient. That meets the requirement. There's not really a lot of I don't think there's any requirements beyond that, except they would expect that you would participate in the community of school groups at large. So, participating in the forum, attending the webinar events, just being friends with each other, which is what we would do anyway. So yeah, does that help? Does that answer the question?
I think the only requirement we aren't meeting currently yet is teaching Latin. So we've told our families that it would be great if they did that at home, but we're not doing that on community day at this point. So, but they've given us lots of wiggle room and said, we understand that that's not an easy subject for new families to start up with. And so there's a lot of grace there. But that was the only thing that even gave us a moment's pause and going, this might be something we have to figure out.
Right. And we just communicate, if you really want to authentically pursue the 7 liberal arts, then you ought to be doing Latin or Greek, but make the baby steps you can, so we do a DVD in our home. We just do a DVD Latin curriculum. And that's one thing that, I don't try to teach on my own. So there's provision made, You also get 25% off their online academy, which then you could sign one of your kids up for one of their Latin classes online. So there's lots of options. Okay. Do you recommend starting slowly? Yes. And adding more, just start with your ideal and look for others who want all of them. Thinking of starting with nature study and fine arts to not overwhelm us. I think that's a great idea. If I did start with what you're able to do. Yeah, I agree with Dara. We're often comfort ourselves by saying whatever is worth doing badly. Yes, that's like our thing, meaning that it's okay to not be perfect. Absolutely, I completely agree with Dara. If I did this over again, I would probably just adopt something like Ambleside Online and not try to create my own thing and just do the parts of the Ambleside program or something that we didn't want to do by ourselves. I would not have tried, if I had known what was in front of me and how much work it would be to do everything that we've done, I would not have tried to create all of this, all the curriculum choices and everything. I would have just chosen somebody else's book list. So somebody used Tapestry of Grace. Yeah, and get together and do the discussions. Another great option for high school is Roman Rhodes Media, Wes Callahan's Western Culture. That would be perfect. Read the books, listen to the videos at home, and then when you're together, do discussion and presentations. I know, I'm like, the only reason we don't use it is because we do a 4-year cycle, and he spends 2 years in Ancients, 1 year for the Greeks, 1 year for the Romans. But I actually still use those videos to prepare for class. Like I watch them and learn from them, and then to help me immerse myself in those books and time periods more deeply. So we started last year with nature study in the fall and Shakespeare in the spring. All of us were also part of another classical group. We wanted to try it out small. This year we're expanding to include nature study. Yeah, that's kind of what we did. We just started small, and actually the second year we didn't do nature study at all, because by the end of the day, and because it was at my house, when it's at somebody's house, there's different problems than if it's at a church, because you're like, these are my friends, let's just have coffee and talk, and so sometimes it's harder to be like, we're here for academics, for getting certain things done. And so sometimes we just wouldn't do nature study. We're like, whatever. And I guess that was fine for our season. So the next year we're like, we probably shouldn't say we're going to do nature study if we're not actually going to do it, so let's just take that item off the list for now. Okay. So Omnibus is another example of a programmed class. I guess that's a good word. Programmed versus non-programmed. How do you decide who to ask to be on your leadership team besides prayer, of course? Prayer. Well, I think if you're starting out brand new, it would be harder. I think the way that I think about it is I'm looking for people who love the classical tradition and who are committed to it And like we have some core values, even if I don't think they're explicitly stated on our group page or anything, but they've become evident that there are core values, and that's what the community, but also personal development. And I was saying them to somebody else. My mind's going blank. Oh, it's PaideaFellowship.com. And so I look for the people who are embodying the things that matter to the classical idea, the classical tradition, people who want to grow and learn, who don't think they know everything, who are flexible, who are generous, and who want to help the community grow, like they desire to help our community grow. So we also, for a director and a co-director, we made a requirement that they have had taught for at least a year, and in our community, or one that's very similar to our community, in order to be considered for the leadership team. How did you decide how much to charge? Actually, we learn by imitation, right? So I just, I knew what another organization charged that will remain nameless, and I just subtracted what their corporate fee was to figure out what actually the mentors made, or the teachers or tutors made, and then divided that out among the weeks. And my goal was to try, because, obviously we can't charge what they're worth, we can't pay them what they're worth, but 90% of that went. So then we charged a tuition rate that would about let them make $10 an hour if they, when you think about prep time and teaching time. Most of our mentors are moms who love the classical tradition and are excited about learning as well. I feel like somebody can be a very successful classical educator if they have general curiosity, are willing to do hard work, and are humble. If those three things are present in somebody, then they are going to be a great classical educator. If any one of those things are missing, then it's probably a better idea not to let them be a mentor or a leadership team person. And so I kept that number in mind, like what was, and then I researched other co-ops in the area and other homeschool classes, and I just kind of looked at what was typical, what's kind of the going rate, because I didn't want it to be so cheap that people questioned whether it was a quality program or not. But I also didn't want to make the mentors feel like I didn't think their work was valuable because I'm just like giving you a penny or something like that. Especially for the Humane Letters class, they're teaching 3 classes, writing, literature, and history. Because we teach an integrated class, you can only have one teacher for that. I mean, Dara and I are close, and so we'll be talking a lot about the literature and the writing, and to make sure there's continuity between what's happening in the level 1 writing and level 2. But that's going to be a bridge we have to figure out and make sure that we maintain harmony throughout the year. So $10 an hour was what I was trying to figure out. And when I added that up, it ended up being about the same price that other communities were charging, if you're talking about just what the mentor themselves was, or the tutor was earning. So a lot of comparison, thinking about what is feasible, how much could a family really pay, and that sort of thing. So based on the amount of work a mentor was doing would be how much you would earn. So the high school mentor is going to earn more than the first, second grade mentor, because outside of class, they have to read all the literature. They have to, they're assessing papers. They're reading all the history. But a first and second grade mentor, they might be picking out some books and pulling some props together, but that's it. So it might take an hour at the most. If it's taking more than that, then they're just being really super creative, but it really shouldn't take more than an hour. And that also protects the mentors to let them know, we expect that you would be able to be prepared in an hour. And so if you're not, let us know. So that's a way as a director, you can communicate with your mentors to be like, how long is it taking you? Did I not really give you enough time? Is it really needing to take this long? What are you doing that maybe you don't need to do? So it's a way to help any, mentors. And I think that makes sense. Starting to stutter, sorry. All right. Do you only hire teachers from parents in the community? Most of our people are parents in the community. I have hired people, and I don't want to say hired because they're not like employees. If you do pay people, then you also have tax stuff that you have to do. So if you don't want to deal with that, then you may not want to have tuition and pay people. That's something you guys will have to decide as a community. My fear, though, is that my fear was that if I did that, then I wouldn't be able to expect them to teach classically. Like I wouldn't be able to say, this is what the expectation is. And they wouldn't take that as seriously. And I wasn't going to start a community to not have a classical education. I just wasn't going to do that. It wasn't worth my time. But we're going to talk about that more. You know, maybe that was a false assumption. I don't know, but that's where my mind was at when we made the decision. That we have 3 teachers who don't have children in the community, and whenever we have somebody like that, it's usually a parent has recommended who's a grandmother who, you know, is homeschooling her grandchildren, or did homeschool and just loves the classical tradition and wants to still be a part of that community. And then our theater director our theater person for the upper school, she just graduated from high school, but she was one of my students, and she's had incredible experience in theater and just loves Shakespeare and coaching students in the skills of theater. She was the perfect fit. And she's we've had to help her learn the communication skills for communicating with parents, but we're doing well with that. So it's on a case-by-case basis. It has to be the right person. We won't hire somebody, and we actually had this conversation a couple weeks ago. We won't let someone be a mentor who just needs extra money. So even if they're excited about what we're doing, if they're just trying to find another, even if they are very Charlotte Mason and classical in the way they think about things, if the primary reason is that I need more money, then they probably won't be a good fit because we don't pay that much. First of all, not very much at all compared to what you could earn if you're teaching an art class somewhere else or something like that. So their thing is that they have to really want to be in the community somehow. And, you know, of course, then a worker deserves their wages. So there is some financial benefit to that as well, but that can't be primary. Do you do any sort of memory work? If you mean like memorizing facts as the way we do our history, then no. If you mean memorizing poetry and speeches as a part of the Humane Letters class, then yes. And memorizing lines in Shakespeare so we can perform, then yes. Oh, somebody put that. Okay, how do you handle students who come unprepared? I'm concerned about discussions falling flat, failing, it's in the reading. Okay, so the first way we deal with that is in the community agreement, parents are signing that they are going to make sure to hold their students accountable, their children accountable for completing assignments. And then when they, so if they are consistently not turning things in, we can talk to the parent, but they know ahead of time this is expected. So we do that. The other thing we do, and I don't know about the other mentors, but in my high school class, they get an incomplete. And I also talk to them about time management. And so I hold them accountable, but I also coach them in the skills to be able to be successful. One of the things I noticed with homeschoolers, and I think this is there's lots of great things about homeschooling, and then there's some negative things. I think one of the negative things is that we tend to get into this flow where we think we can get things done whenever we feel like it. And so there's not the pressure that this is an actual time frame. This is an actual deadline that you must meet, and you have to learn how to organize your week so that you can meet the deadline. Of course, it's in a restful way as much as possible, but then I have to work with each student. So one student last year wasn't getting her reading done, but I found out it was because she was she was having to read it over several times because she didn't get it. So I had to give her more specific coaching in how to use the highlighting system, so she was apprehending what she was reading, and then it happened faster, and all of a sudden she could participate in discussions. Other students, it was time there were some students that they just needed to learn some time management things, like what are you actually doing during your week. And I teach my students how to use a weekly plan sheet, or I tell them about it. I think next year I'm actually going to print them out as a part of our orientation and do like a mini session at the beginning of the year for study skills. Like, this is how you schedule your week, the things that, and you start with the things that you have a specific time you have to be there. Like if I have violin lessons at 10, then I put that there, and I have church at this time, and you can't do anything else because there's a specific time frame you have to be there. Put all those in first, and then you see what your free time is. The thing that they have to do then is kind of figure out how long it takes them to do their schoolwork. Once they figure that out, they have to block in that time during that week. They know if it takes them 12 hours to get all their humane letters work done, they have to schedule that in, and they have to treat that like clocking into work. And so I have this conversation often. This is how you must relate to your schoolwork. You can't just say, oh, I'll do it after dinner. No, you have to have it scheduled. If you choose not to do it during that hour, well, then you need to choose another time at that moment that you will make up for that hour. And some students really resist this. And I know when students haven't done this, because then they keep having problems getting it done. But this is what must happen. I also know it because that's what I do. I don't get it done because I think, oh, I'll just do it later. It never happens. It's not going to happen. You must schedule things in this way. There are those students who are just amazingly fast at getting stuff done, but that is not the typical student. Most of us have to work really hard to get things done, and that takes coaching and study skills and time management.
Yeah, and as teachers, we try to streamline that as much as possible. For my middle schoolers, because they're just barely starting to learn time management skills, I did a checklist for them each week with their homework on it, and I expected them to check it off when they were finished. And I taught them with a Post-it note on a calendar system how to, take their assignments and put it on which day they're going to do which assignment. So it's coaching in those skills. And also we're going to have a spreadsheet this year for our own selves to keep track of who completed homework and who didn't. And so we'll check it off complete and incomplete on our own spreadsheet so that we can keep track of whether kids are falling behind. And then sometimes there have been occasions when I had to email a parent and just be like, hey, what's up? Have you guys been really busy? Or is he struggling with this subject? Or is she, having too many outside activities? Just get on the same base with the parent. And usually the parent kind of takes the hint and really digs in and helps them complete their work then. But don't be afraid of parent involvement, and don't be afraid to communicate with them. In fact, communicating with parents is really important.
Yes.
The one family in particular is a large family, and she's very good about keeping tabs on her kids if she's aware of what's going on. But sometimes I just had to say, hey, just so you know, this is our assignment coming up. I know this is going to take them a little more time. So parent communication is important too.
Yeah, I think that might have been our biggest failure last year is, and then, we were still learning. So, it was still something we had to learn. Communicating with parents is huge. And you have to learn how to do that well. I've taught lots of Lost Tools of Writing classes online, and I used to be afraid to communicate with parents, and I would avoid it or procrastinate about it. But once I finally got over my fear, I realized that parents were so grateful to have another advocate for their children's education. They were so grateful to be like, wow, somebody is like caring about my kid just like I care about them. And they were thrilled that I reached out and told them. They're like, thank you. It makes them know that you love their kid and that, you're for them. Most of the time, the parents didn't know their kid wasn't finishing the work, or the kids said that they did it and they didn't. We have homeschool kids lie about finishing their work. I'm just saying, just like every other kid. So Dara is totally right. Definitely. And I found this last year, I noticed that the sooner I emailed a parent, the sooner the problem was nipped in the bud, which is the right word. I don't know. I would even recommend if somebody doesn't turn something in that week, I would just shoot a text or an email to the parent. And I like texting as long as, and I let my parents know ahead of time and ask them if they text for quick messages like that. Because as a busy homeschool mom who's also teaching, teaching is not my full-time job. It's not like it is for a classroom teacher. Like I don't have a planning period. I don't have that. So being able to at lunch, during recess, say, hey, just want to let you know that he didn't turn this in. I want to know if there's anything I can do to help. So whenever you're communicating to a parent that a child didn't do work, don't ever make it sound condemning or accusatory. Ask, hey, can I help in any way? I noticed he didn't have his work. Does he have any questions he wasn't letting me know about? And that's a great way to say it, because then you're not accusing, you're not condemning, and you're trying to understand and help. Okay. We began Lost Tools of Writing in 9th. We have done it as early as 7th, but we found that it really does do best in 9th grade. We do Writing and Rhetoric by Classical Academic Press from 5th grade to 8th grade, and then they switch to Lost Tools of Writing. Before that, they just do oral narrations in 1st and 2nd, and mostly oral narration in 3rd and 4th, and some written narrations if a student is ready. But Charlotte Mason, narration is pre-writing. So decoding and all that's pre-reading. Narration is pre-writing. That is writing class for those students whenever they narrate. Do you think it's a problem? Oh, wait. How many literature books do you plan to be able to read? It just depends on how long they are. It usually ends up being between 3 and 6, depending on the length. This year will be 4. This coming up year will be 4. What age do you, okay, folder system, oh yeah, Dara's okay. Do you have a post on YCAP? I don't, but I actually am working on one. I'm reviewing a couple of the Writing and Rhetoric books, and so just make sure you're on the email list, and that way you'll get an email when that post comes out. But I can tell you, I'll just tell you specifically why now, without going into too much detail, is that Writing and Rhetoric, while there are elements of the Progymnasmata in IEW, Writing and Rhetoric is more completely the Progymnasmata. And historically, the Progymnasmata was what was studied before somebody entered into classical rhetoric. It is playful. Seriously, the way that it's set up is you're playing with language and learning, and you're beginning to get a sense for the limits and the possibilities of all these different kinds of writing. I absolutely love it. And I'll kind of leave it at that, because that's the essence of what a writing program should be in those years. It should be playful. You should be beginning to get a sense for the limits and possibilities of things while imitating great writing. You should not be asked to come up with your own thing. While you weren't asked to come up with your own thing in IEW, it wasn't great literature that you were imitating. It was, just a paragraph about whatever, and they weren't bad, but they weren't great literature either. And, I have the utmost respect for IEW, and they produce a lot of great things, but I feel like having the actual fables, the actual stories was more closely aligned with the classical ideal than just an average paragraph. Writing and Rhetoric when new kids are coming into the program. Yeah, that's been the biggest tension point of trying to figure out. So what we've decided to do, last year was our first year using Writing and Rhetoric, and we did 1 book for the whole year. We realized they could have actually done 2. And they are designed to do in a semester. And it went really well. And so the 5th and 6th grade class jumped into book 3 and did just fine. And so we felt comfortable with them jumping in that way. As I've read them more and more, there is going to be some review that needs to be built in. But it tells you at the beginning of the book, under objectives, in the teacher edition, it will tell you the objectives for the year. It will let you know things. It will say reviewing this or reviewing that. And so you'll get to a point where, so if they didn't get Fable, well, in book 3, they're reviewing a little bit of that. And since they're older, they're going to pick that up more quickly. So the older a student is, the quicker they pick up the things that, maybe they didn't get in the earlier years. And so this next year, 5th grade and the 5th and 6th grade class will be doing book 4 and 5. And then the following year, they'll rotate. They'll do a 2-year rotation. So 1 year they'll do book 2 and 3, and the next year they'll do book 4 and 5, and then they'll just rotate back and forth. And we've just decided that that's okay. Even if they're backtracking, they're still playing with language and seeing the limits and possibilities of it, which is the whole point. Plus, they're doing written narrations. I have no problem doing that. And I know there is, and I'm mostly convincing myself right now because, and I know all of you probably are feeling the same way, there's this little part of us that says, no, you have to start at book 1 and do all the books and go to the very end, and that's the only way that's acceptable. And and while it was designed that way, and that would be the ideal, there's the tension between the real and the ideal. And as we work this through this year, we'll see how it goes, and we'll see if it was a horrible idea and none of you should have listened to me, or if it actually worked. So experiment time. Yeah, anyway. So, and then 7th and 8th, okay, yeah, they're going to do book 6 and 7. This year, and then the following year they'll do book 8 and 9, and they'll do that 2-year rotation. And then if people want to start some writing instruction before 5th grade, we're encouraging them to use book 1 and book 2, or did we say whatever the ones they don't use in the 5th grade rotation, the 5th, 6th grade rotation. I'll do that with Katie. You know, we'll do Fable together when she's in 3rd grade or 4th grade, probably 4th grade. So yeah, okay. Any other questions? It's 5:04, so any short last-minute questions? And you can always ask questions in the Expanding Wisdom community. Feel free to post any questions you didn't get a chance to ask in here, there, and we'll be happy to wrestle through them. Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for a great time. I will send you all an email with some of the links that I was talking about. And also, if you have any other questions, like I said, head over to the Expanding Wisdom Facebook community and ask them there. There's plenty of other people who would love to get in the conversation as well. My pleasure. Thank you. Have a great night, ladies. Take care. Bye. Thank you. Bye, Dara.